and in fact any ending is, you have to impose it. And so the rhythm of the film, the length of the film obviously dictates some of that. But I think one of the big realizations we had through the process of the film too is that there could be we couldn't present an ending because there wasn't one, in a sense of the movement stopped, or what is continuing to unfold stopped. But the real question then becomes the realization that can you continue to love in the face of uncertainty? And really when we landed there, I feel that's when we felt, okay, now we're done. Because that's the only place you can end up, I think.
It's hard to know when to stop, and actually I didn't want to stop, and so we were shooting up until about 2.5 weeks ago, the 1-year anniversary, and you know, I guess that's when we felt like, you know, now we can say we can try and complete this film because we went through this entire cycle of a year and had a chance to reflect at how far we come within that particular period of time with that story arc. And yes, I guess when you get to a point at 2 in the morning when we come up with the ending and decide that, okay, we feel like this is a conclusion and now we can put it out into the world.
One thing that I did, pardon me, speak up a bit, okay. One thing that I didn't notice in the film was the voice of religion. And yeah, Ken Wilber, he talks about evolution having this impulse to always transcend and include. And you're speaking about love, and it's a spiritual principle. And many of the spirituality is born from the religious teachings of the world. And so many people are adhering to these and upholding these religions. How to be included in these movements so that their spirituality, their stories are not rendered totally obsolete and they're left without any footing. But how can they be included and embraced in this process?
I think Fierce Light touched on that a lot more. I actually addressed religion more in Fierce Light. So this film, I was going more for just the core universal love in this film, I guess. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I remember there's lots of stories coming out actually of different occupations where there was involvement from religious communities, different areas. There was one Catholic priest, I think in Seattle, who ended up becoming part of the port blockade and ended up getting beat up and thrown in jail. And he told the story and he explained why he was doing it. And it was because of his religious beliefs that he said, I have to occupy because this is what, they're totally aligned with my beliefs. It's just that they don't have to believe what I believe in that sense. But I'm there right there with them. So there was certainly a large representation, and certainly there's lots of Buddhist meditations going on and all these aspects through all the camps. So.
Way in the corner there.
I was in Barcelona where the Indignados were in Plaza Catalunya, and there's one of the things that stuck with me is that a woman that I was next to said that Los Indignados, or the word indignated, was never going to mean the same thing, and the same thing with the word occupy. But the idea of like putting together and hyphenating away the occupy love with a word that is so strong, like our ability to create language through film. So like this idea of like your film creating language and how is your relationship to that language, and using two words that have not the same meaning anymore, but like love has such a personal and it's so enormous that it's almost like so hard to define, and to put them together, kind of what was your, like in this search for, was that your original search in a way?
Right. Well, it's interesting because I came up with Occupied Love about, when was it, like 4 days after Occupy started? A week? 3 days after Occupy started. I was like, Occupied Love! And then I got the website right away. That's why we actually had OccupyLove.com. Ian and I are really bad that way. As soon as we come up with a film title, we get the URL. We must have dozens. Hey, we're changing it to this. And Nova's like, don't buy the website yet. So it really came, very quickly that, we were already searching for this love story, I find this real strength in combinations of seeming opposites, and that's been the nature of the trilogy as well: scared, sacred, fierce, light. So and I really think, and this is touched on in the film, is this idea of love and power coming together is really important. And it's really a core idea that, as Martin Luther King said, that love without power is sentimental and anemic, and power without love is reckless and abusive. And I think that some of us tend towards to being lovers, and we might be a little diffuse, and some of us might be more directed, and power is also known as purpose. And when you bring those two together, you have this wonderful balance, and then you can really create some real change.
You were really on the front line in many places, many small tourist places on the planet. How did love protect you? Were you ever faced with incredible fear or seeming danger? And how did love guide you?
Well, love doesn't always work. I was semi-kidnapped in Tahrir in Egypt, and that was maybe more stupidity than anything. I do think love helps, in all my work, because I'm always meeting people everywhere I go. I have an open heart, and so I'm not a stranger. Very soon, I'm not a stranger. I'm making friends. If I'm in any context, I'm looking for friends. I'm looking for solidarity. That's why I'm there, and people pick up on that. And then I also have those people become my protectors as well. So very soon I go into situations as part of a community. I always have somebody who is my first contact, and I enter as part of a community. I don't really come from the top down or from the, I try to really come as a guest in a way, with a lot of respect and a lot of love, and that does keep me safe.
I really appreciate the power of questions, and your question was absolutely brilliant. It not only framed this story in film, but in and of itself, it contributed to the paradigm shift in the world. And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about when and how you came up with that question.
That's a good question. I wonder, I don't even know. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago. It emerged out of Fierce Light, and the genesis of it just, now I feel like I just always lived with it, because I was traveling around to all these places. You saw me ask the president of Bolivia this question, all these people in this press scrum talking about, carbon levels and parts per million, and I'm like, how could the crisis be a love story? It probably came out of, I think I began with moving from a search to understand spirituality, and then bringing that down to love, and then bringing together, and then always in the context of what's happening in the world. So that was crisis, and those two, that collision of love and crisis emerged with this, this sort of question of how could we transform this crisis. It emerged out of, also out of Scared Sacred, where I traveled to the ground zeros of the world, and I found people who faced unimaginable crisis and were able to transform it into hope and meaning. And so that really was the genesis ultimately of the question. But at the exact moment it arose, I have to think about that. Colin, how much longer do we have?
Back row.
You probably have one or two more questions.
Okay, one or two more questions. Way in the back? Yeah.
Speaking of the question that you asked Evo Morales,
Yeah.
I wondered what his response was and why you didn't include it.
Yeah, well, what he did was he was collecting questions, so he answered them all at once. So I didn't get a really sharp, clear response to it that I could. I got really his expression of, what are you asking? And then he really proceeded mostly to talk about the law of Mother Earth rights that they were working on passing. And it didn't quite, it wasn't exactly, I never got a direct answer, that's why. Yeah. And so but it was, you know, you could see his questioning of it, and then that led into the beginning. It was really at the beginning of the journey where everyone thought I was crazy, including my best friend. You know, it's interesting to me how as time went on, and as the movements began to really get stronger and stronger around the world, people didn't say, "Are you crazy?" They said, "Of course it's a love story." You know, so there really was a shift in the 3 years that I was shooting the film. It was really interesting. Yeah. Okay, we'll take one more. Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, next is probably a year of us, you know, releasing the film, and that's a really good question because you can all help a lot with this film. If you were to post on Facebook or Twitter, or just generally put the word out that you love the film, that really helps build a buzz. When we go into movie theaters, if you can join in and really help us get people into the theaters, that's always a real challenge with independent films. So it's going to become like a campaign to get the film out into the world, and we're going to do that in a number of stages. So join us on Facebook. Just go to occupylove.com and just click on the Facebook group. That really helps a lot. So the next thing is really getting the film out there and using it as a tool of transformation. We'll be doing house party models as well as a theatrical release, as well as the television release in Canada, which is going to be in June on Super Channel, and it's going to be you know, available online. So there'll be many ways it'll get out there, and we really want to see it spread far and wide. And we're also building this whole online project, which is going to include an app called Found Love, where people can gather hearts and things that they find just like in the film and upload them to this website, which then triggers and tags it with clips from the full Fierce Love trilogy that can then kind of emerge as a kind of online. Nicole, maybe you can explain that. She's the genius behind this project. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was one of the fortunate ones to watch a very early screening of what it was originally called Involved Love. And one of the things we noticed, and I'm sure people in the audience noticed it as well, is how many different heart shapes that they saw in the movie that Velcro was filming. And one of the things that he shared with us was that he actually filmed a lot of those graffiti hearts with his iPhone. And some of that is footage. And so basically we decided that we wanted to extend that participation to everybody else. And so we're creating a mobile app where you can basically find instances of love in the form of a heart shape and tag a mood to it in a story. And it's actually going to create an online experience where it'll be like the largest collection of hearts you've ever seen. So it's going to be a beautiful montage that you can then search to find. There'll be a box in the center of the experience that'll say what it is like, and you can choose a word that describes love, and then it'll actually pull clips from Velcro's entire work over the course of 12 years that help to connect that word with his message and what public love means.
And it would help a lot on your way out if you grabbed a voting ballot and voted for this film. And also, if you would like to Occupy, October 15th is the 1-year anniversary of Occupy Vancouver. And so you can come and celebrate with a birthday cake from 10 o'clock to 10 o'clock, October 15th at the Art Gallery. See you there.
On screen a bit of the Maple Spring, the Quebec Students' Strike, which I think is kind of Occupy 2.0. And Gabrielle Nadeau-Dubois, who was the leader of CLASS, the biggest spokesperson for CLASS, the biggest organization, is here in Vancouver tomorrow night and is speaking with his co-spokesperson from CLASS to talk about how they did what they did, how they succeeded, and they were totally victorious, if you haven't gotten the latest news, and to talk about how we can build a movement together to bring down Stephen Harper. So. W2, right? W2, and it's also a celebration of the Maple Spring. And I just end with this: the first time in my life that we've actually had real solidarity between English Canada and Quebec, and that's not a long story. I don't know what is.
All right, thank you so much. I hope to see you at the after party.